In this presentation, for the course Analysis of Power System, I will discuss fails data attacks on state estimators in power networks. The presentation is based on some reviewed papers that are listed below. The presentation has three sections: fails data attack description, economic impact, and the protective measures. In order to supply electricity to the final user, electrical engineers had created the energy management systems that allow the power grid operators to perform several tasks that are the power delivery and quality, a customer engagement, and the operations of the grid itself. For a case, when we are going to talk about false data attacks, we're going to center on the operations of the system. First, to describe the false data attacks, we need to establish what is bad data detection. The bad data detection is a technique included in the state estimator. The state estimator is basically to estimate the phase angles of a power system based on the measurements that come from the network. These measurements are the status X. So we have all these measurements set that are fed into the state estimator that runs an estimation based on the weighted least squares and do it iteratively through the Gauss-Newton algorithm and give us an state estimator. We compare these values with the actual measurements and we can obtain a residual that is going to be verified against a certain threshold in the bad data detector. If it passes, we'll go to the next phases. If there is something wrong, we'll make a signal to the operator. The origin of these alarms could be attributed to some noise in the system. So if everything is okay, it will go to perform a contingency analysis and optimum power flow. Now let's first consider if there is an attacker to the network. Let's call that he can somehow introduce some bad measurements that we will design A. So the original measurements sit with his vector X plus E error will be altered and we will have this additional term A fed into the state estimator that will run again the routine to calculate the estimation, but as a result the residual will have will be affected by this error introduced. But the case we are seeing now is a case where the attacker is naive. It's just picking up any measurement and trying his best to alter the measurements without being noticed. But as he just picked this measurement, not knowing what effect will have, it's highly possible that we will be detected by the bad data detector, and consequently the operator will take some action against it. Next, what happens if the attacker constructs a more detailed attack? That's it, that if the attacker takes the Jacobian of the model that displaying the power flows as a function of the system state, this will look very like the real system. And if it does a linear multiplication of this Jacobian, we'll create an arbitrary state HC that will be fed along with the real system into the state estimator. Consequently, the state estimator will determine an state X plus C that we will be consistent with the real power grid, and as a consequence also the residual will not change. So we will find that no alarm is given to the operator, and all the subsequent stages of the analysis will be unnoticed. So what will be the motivation for an attack? This could be economic. One of the possible ways of profit from an attack is the virtual bidding, that it's a mechanism set in the markets to adjust the difference between the day ahead market and the exposed prices, because usually these bids in the day ahead market and the final settlement, there is a gap, and there is this virtual bidding that tries to decrease the difference between them. So in this graphic we see in red the volume of the virtual transactions that are done during a certain period of time. So what are the steps that an attacker has to profit from such attack in a virtual bidding? Well, first, it has to be a virtual bidder. Usually they are financial institutions that are allowed to buy and sell virtual power in the power markets. So first, in the day ahead market, it has to buy and sell power at certain locations, and we will perform this transaction at a certain prices. So we will say the locations J1 and J2 with their respective prices in the day ahead market. Next, it will inject, it will manipulate the measurements when the real-time market is happening. And finally, the exposed market, that is the final settlement. So finally, as a result of this manipulation of the measurements in the exposed market, we will sell or buy a certain amount of power according to what it was bought in the day ahead market. So the profit that we'll get from this transaction is expressed in this formulation. And we can see from the paper read for this assignment simulation that was done, and where we can see what will be the price without attack and what happens when there is an attack on three sensors, how the price go up because of the manipulation. And we can see that in the bus one of this system there was a profit of $8 per megawatt hour. So the power operators need to protect against these attacks. We can also talk about terrorist attack, like happened in 2015 in the Ukrainian grid, that was taken out of control by some hackers and led almost 500,000 people without light because of this attack. It's not been already in the States or elsewhere, but it is something that we need to keep in mind. That is also another objective of the attackers. So we need to retrofit our grid. And some of the measures to protect include the multi-path routing and also data verification to make harder for the attackers his attack. So when we talk about protective measures, we need to bear in mind that many of the installations out there in the field are old, somewhat old, and they are not provided with security measures. So we need to retrofit the grid. And also we need to consider that the network is a meshed grid where the measurements are traveling from one point to the final destination and control center through various nodes that is not directly connected each measurement to the control center. So this increases the complexity of the system. So among the security measures we can take is the data authentication, the routing. This could be single path or multiple path, and the physical protection. That is not really a electrical engineer solution. Yes, in order to verify the data sent, we need to upgrade the installation. So we have these legacy devices that are protected against big data, but are vulnerable to malicious attack. So we can install these bumping the wire devices to verify that the information has not been corrupted. So let's consider this simple system where the attacker wants to send that information from bus 1 to bus 4, and in between there are two buses. So as the system is unprotected, he only has to intervene on two measurements to send his bad data information. Of course, the best protective measure is to protect all the buses, but this means to spend some sums of money that maybe are not considering the budget of the companies. So we want to see this problem as the optimization problem, where we can find the best solution for a given budget and still be protected. If we consider that we have protected measurement C5 and the attacker wants to launch an attack starting from bus 1 to bus 4, we can see that now the attacker has to compromise three measurements. That is a higher effort that he has to do to perform the attack. This simple example shows um, the necessity to establish a criteria to protect the system, especially when we are talking in the real world of hundreds of thousands of buses. We need to establish a criteria how to protect with data authentication the power system. The last protective measure in this final slide is routing. Multipath routing is the best technique of routing to protect the networks. Multipath routing uses devices that can send information through various trajectories. So this schematic we have here is similar to the previous one, where we have a data source that wants to reach an state estimator, and it goes through a meshed network of points that are in fact substations. So what happens if an attack happens between node N and node N plus 1? Well, information will go through to the state estimator, but maybe it will not check with information that's being sent through other ways, because we have several paths, and this information received from the attacker path will be suspicious because there is a redundancy of the information that we will discard and will flag there is a problem with the information set. And that's it for this presentation. Thank you.